apologize. So it's a series of community meetings, polls, public notices, legislation. It's designed to really incorporate what the community wants and only move forward after the community has voted to proceed with any kind of district, any kind of cost, any kind of study. It's through a series of votes and meetings. I think that's most important for everyone to notice and to know. It doesn't happen without your input. At the end of that project, actually before, we understand what the cost is going to be. It's funded through assessments on the parcels in the area chosen by the community. And I've said this from the beginning, this is one of the drawbacks, but it's an option. And that's what this is it's an option for the community to better the roads, knowing from the front that it will be funded through assessments on the parcel owners. Improvements to the roads will be done to dedicable standards. That includes drainage, minimum rights of way, shoulder, striping, etc. At the end of the improvement district, the improved roads can be dedicated to the county. And I think it's important then, knowing what we know about improvement districts, is to know what's happened so far. So we can follow the timeline of where we stand, what's been going on that you may or may not have been aware of. So fall 2018, I entered office. My main priorities were roads and public safety. In 2019, I was asked to present an improvement district at the Hawaiian Acres Community Association meeting. 2020 spring, a followed up meeting with HACA and HARC. Spring of 2020, we did a community survey with 4 options presented and mailed to 3,200 Hawaiian Acres residents by Hawaiian Acres Community Association. And I did notice, just gonna make the note, that some people said they didn't get the survey. If you didn't live here before spring of 2020, you didn't get this mailer, period. Spring of 2021, we reconnected with HACA and HARC. COVID happened, basically spring of 2020, and I think it set back everyone, and it just was not a good time to have the discussion, given unemployment rates, COVID, economy, everything. We put it on pause. It doesn't make sense. Spring of 2021, following that HACA and HARC meeting, both boards asked me by letter of request to draft a resolution to begin a feasibility study. We did hold a public Zoom meeting with Hawaiian Acres Road Corporation following that meeting and the letter. And spring 21, I drafted the resolution 10521 to Public Works Director to begin a feasibility study. And on May 4th, which was just not more than a few days ago, we heard resolution 10521 before the council and postponed it to the call of the chair of finance, which is me. So that's a brief, picture of what happened, the timeline of what happened. So the community survey, I want to touch on the community survey. Community survey that went out was organized and mailed out by HACA, or Hawaiian Acres Community Association. There was 3,200 total mailed in spring 2020. And it gathered a baseline community input on scope of project. It was not and will not be used as the option going forward that was agreed upon by all members. It just helped us form an idea of what we want to see in the community and what roads would be wanted to be fixed, and to put it out to what we can do as a public vote. So of the 3,200 mailers that were sent, 714 responses came back. And as I've come to understand, that's pretty good given the response rate that we've seen in the past, which has been 5 to 10% of people responding. This was about 20% of all the mailers that went out having a voluntary response. And of the 4 options, and as you can see on the screen, you had your different options that were present. And number 4 being no improvement, number 3, certain, just all a little bit different. The majority of people voted for option 2. Option 2 was to pave all lettered roads, including Road 1, and then to improve gravel. I do need to make a side note here that during the discussion at council, improve gravel because the roads need to be brought to a dedicable standard. And this was what, a map that we put together to kind of explain what option 2 was, what it looks like. I know there was some concerns raised by some of the members that their road wasn't on, so we made sure we got a road 11 back on the map. And this just gives a good visual for everyone so we can understand what the scope of the project would be. I would like to point out that if you remove the green roads here, then you're looking at a combined total of about 23 miles of roadway. And this is all the paved. This would be for paving all of the roadways that are lettered and Road 1. And it does provide, in my eyes, a very good grid work for people to get into their homes. But it is, again, a fairly large project. Okay, county's role. So our role is to have an ongoing discussion with the community to establish your project, your cost, to have the community meetings, to discuss what's going on, to see what people want to do, and to understand the issues. And I really am your connection to the county. My door is always open. As I stated, previously, my number, email, give me a call. I want to have the discussion, and I want everyone to know that. I want you to know that your voice is heard. We haven't set anything in stone yet, and the resolution's been postponed. So you have the option as a community to say yes or no to this. We need to hold public meetings, provide public notice, and meet your expectations. That's our role. We provide, by resolution, moving forward on a feasibility study. We accept the study when it comes back, so we understand the costs. We put the project out to bid. We accept the bids as long as they come back within our expected cost estimates, and we float a bond to cover the project cost. For a project of this size, although we may have heard in the paper it's going to be $1 billion, we'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, I can understandably, it would be hard for a community of any size to pull a bond or to float a project of this size and to have a ability to fund a project like that. So I think that's mainly the county's role, is being and providing a funding source and making sure that we meet the community's expectations. And then, of course, I'm always upfront about this, there has to be an assessment for fees for properties to cover the bond costs. Okay. Okay, so resolution 10521, the resolution that stirred up everyone, and I apologize for that. It initiates a feasibility study for an improvement district for roadways in Hawaiian Acres. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we move ahead with the project. It means that we look at the cost. We understand what it would cost. We understand the scope of the project. We identify all the variables, and we nail down all the construction requirements. We put it all in a report. We get back the report, and we understand the cost. That's it. That's the purpose of the resolution. It is step 1, as laid out by Chapter 12 in our Hawaiʻi County Code, on how to proceed with an improvement district. After the feasibility study, we have to accept the study, and the community is involved. Before we can move forward to the project, there has to be mailers. This is, again, it's a series of steps involved. Like anything, if you don't know the cost, you can't have a good discussion on whether it's going to affect you negatively or positively. So beginning with this resolution would initiate a feasibility study. And again, this was postponed at council because we needed better information and better numbers to move forward. Like I said, begins a feasibility study for an improvement district in Hawaiian Acres. At the time we brought it up, Public Works and Finance Directors needed more time to come back with better numbers. Postponed to the call of the chair. And I think council and community, to highlight community, really needed more information, relevant figures, data, financial picture to better understand what is going on, what this entails, what's going to be included, And ultimately, how much is it going to cost? I said it from the beginning, every community meeting, I would never move forward with this unless I know how much it costs and what it's going to cost myself and my family. And this is really important. This project will only happen if Hawaiian Acres residents want to improve their roads, approve the construction scope, understand and agree with the cost estimates that are provided by the feasibility study, and you vote to approve the project via a county mailer. Period. It doesn't happen otherwise. And I like this option because of this aspect. You are in control, and I never want you to feel like you're out of control. And it's the reason why I was drawn to this. It's up to you guys whether you want to move forward or not on this project. So the information that was the basis of the newspaper article in the Tribune Herald was based on information presented by the Public Works and Finance Director for the County of Hawaii. Those numbers were based on paving 73 miles of roadway, an initial cost of $233,000 per mile to study the improvement district, $1 million a mile to engineer the project, and $10 million a mile to pave the roads. As you may have seen, if you watched the video, if you saw that the Tribune Herald, you know, some of the council members were caught off guard with the numbers. I certainly was. I didn't expect them to be this high. And I do think they need to be looked at further. They're not affordable. They're not acceptable. So incorrect data, and I want to correct this for everyone because this has been a sticking point, and I'm watching different conversations happen, and I think the most important thing I can do is at least present good data for everybody and point out inherent problems in what we saw in the paper and what we were presented with during the meeting. The dollar amount figures presented to the council were not based on similar projects. They were based on the Lono Kona Sewer Improvement District. That project was very particular. The difference between a sewer project and a roadway improvement project is considerable, to say the least. Given the USDA funding, the amount of oversight and requirements that were involved in a sewer improvement district project are incredibly more substantive than what you'd see in a roadway project. So the numbers that we had, they really don't highlight what it would cost to do the project in Hawaiian Acres if we choose to go ahead with it. The numbers were also based on paving all 70 plus miles of Hawaiian Acres. Again, at option 2, it only considered 23 miles of roadway. So you can take that $1 billion crazy estimate that was thrown around, divide it by 3, and it's still, I mean, it's still a crazy estimate, but at least you can see the difference between what was presented and reality. Recent costs to pave lava inundated portions of Highway 132 were $2 million a mile. That was to cut fresh, brand new lava that's 40 foot thick, cut a roadway that's the width of a highway, and lay down pavement and gravel to create an actual right-of-way that would be consisting of a highway. And you can see the cost difference in what was submitted as $10 million a mile and $2 million a mile. On top of that, Hawaiian Acres has existing infrastructure. So if we can pave 800-degree lava for $2 million a mile, and Hawaiian Acres has existing roadways that are already graveled, that's a big step up from fresh lava. So I think we all need to take that into account when we consider possible costs for this. The previous administrator I spoke today to, who has experience in many types of improvement districts, stated the feasibility cost should cost no more than $250,000, not per mile, total. If there was an EA required, the cost should be no more than $500,000 to understand the study and to break down what it's going to take to pave 23 miles of roadway to a standard. Furthering that discussion, we discussed ways to limit down that right-of-way that was needed. Instead of a 50-foot right-of-way, which will be very hard to find in the limited space we have between pole and properties in Hawaiian Acres, it would bring down a rural standard, which would equal 40-foot right-of-way, which is basically two 12-foot lanes, providing access for shoulders, providing access for people to pull over and allow an emergency vehicle down, and for two vehicles to pass safely on the road. And I think that really would help us a lot in this situation. FYI, these are just some of the basics that we pulled from the recent Highway 132 project in 2018. And again, 3.2 miles of highway completely rebuilt on 800-degree lava for $2.03 million a mile. That's 80% less than we recorded in the newspaper. The reason I'm telling you this is because we need to make sure we use good data to make a good decision going forward. And I want you to have both sides of the picture and also know that I'm watching this and I want to make sure this works for everybody before we move on. So what now? So the resolution is postponed to the call of the chair. That just means it's sitting in a holding pattern. I can bring it back. I can let it sit. I won't bring it back until I have better information from Public Works Director, Finance Director. I want to know what the costs are. I want to know what it's going to cost so that we can break down what the assessments would be. I want to further delineate what the scope of this project is going to be so that we understand exactly what we're shooting for, what the community is wanting to do. And again, that involves you. So I want to hear your comments. If you have a negative comment, please let me know. If you have a positive comment, please let me know. Either way, I need to know what's going on so I can better judge what we want to do going forward. When I say we, I mean all of us. The step in front of us, again, is to study and to understand the cost of the project. That's it. We don't do anything unless we know what the cost is. I wouldn't expect anyone to buy a home and say the cost may be somewhere between $20 to $1,000 a month. That's crazy. You got to know what you're going to do to make a good decision. We have to understand the cost if we're going to understand what that assessment looks like, so you, Hawaiian Acres residents, can understand if you want to do this or not. Good data always equals good decisions, period. I have requested a tighter estimate of the study costs from Director Ikaika Rodenhurst and Finance Director Deanna Sacco. And again, there's no movement until cost and scope are clearly articulated and that cost being acceptable for the residents of Hawaiian Acres community, period. That's the end of my PowerPoint. Again, I have an open door. I want to hear your comments. My phone number is 808-961-8263. My email is right there. I'm going to leave this screen up. If you have questions, go into your chat box. I want you to chat in. I have two people on who are watching and helping me understand what the questions are. I want to hear your questions. I'm going to address them. If I can't address them, then I will get back to you as soon as I can with a good answer. I'm not gonna make anything up tonight, and I just want to know that I want you all to know that I'm hearing you, and I understand the concern. I would never approve something that was $750 a month. That is absolutely crazy. I will not put you guys out of your houses. PUNA has been notoriously underrepresented and underfunded. I'm here to help the people of PUNA, not displace the people of PUNA. We all live here because this is what we can afford or this is what we want. It's a lifestyle that we all appreciate, and I completely understand that. I live on a gravel road. I understand the concerns if that road was to be paved out. I share everyone's concerns, and I want you to know that. For the record, as I've seen this pop up a few times, I know it's been said, I do not own property in Hawaiian Acres. I do not, I guess by saying that, I'm saying I don't have an interest in whether this moves forward or not at a personal level. I just want to make sure I'm providing opportunity to Hawaiian Acres. And this improvement district process can be duplicated in any other subdivision if they so choose. It's just, again, an opportunity for everyone to better their roads or not. If you choose not, that's okay. That's why we're here. It's a very democratic, people involved process. You vote no, you vote yes. But by doing it this way, we also relieve everyone of the face-to-face confrontations and the hectic community association meetings. I think this provides a good experience for everyone that's very fair, and I like fairness. So my first question that I'm getting is from, I won't say the name, let's take the question. So who pays for the feasibility study, us or the county? It's a great question. So when I originally started off, I was told that the county does not pay for the feasibility study. As I read through the code and the language in chapter 12, there's a section that that uses the word may. Now, when you see the word may, then that's basically a maybe, okay? Straightforward. So the cost of the feasibility study may be reimbursed by the assessments on the properties in the improvement district. I personally would like to see the county provide some assistance for this project, because again, and I'm not shy to state the obvious, we created these properties in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and then will not pay to maintain private roads, period. So simple answer, we may. And that's outlined in our code. It's not the best answer, but I think it does show you that there can be an option one way or another. Sorry, I'm looking at different questions. In regards to HAWA. These all just type. What is that? Sorry, hold on one second.
This is a question.
What's the options? I don't see it as a question. Sorry, I'm going to jump into the chat and see if I can pull up some of the questions. And there's a lot of questions on here, so bear with me. And again, if you're having questions, and I'm looking at the chat, if you're stuck, I mean, I prefer that you ask me, and if I don't know, I'll get you a proper answer, but I want to make sure we're all basing on the same information. So we can make a good decision together. The county does, so there's let me just touch on what we touched on already. There's an improvement district revolving fund within the county, and that's what's used to pay for the costs. And again, it may be reimbursed by the assessments and it may not, but it's not laid out that it says shall. That's incredibly important. If it said shall be reimbursed by assessments, then that's a shall, and that's very different. I learned that early on in my career as a councilman. Mr. Director Rodenhurst, I see you on here. Okay, let's go. So I got a question here. So if you are only doing this so our community has better roads, does that mean the public will not be allowed to use them except in case of emergency natural disaster as was originally designed for? Yeah, I think that question is saying if the roads are built using the improvement district and they're paved, can only the residents of Hawaiian Acres use them? And I would think, actually I'm not even thinking that, yes, they'd be open for anyone to use your roads, just as they are now. I was a solar installer for 10 years. I was in and out of Hawaiian Acres doing solar jobs. I'd say private roads are open to the public, and they have been. There have been existing rights of way for numbers of years. You as a private community can do what you want with your roads. That's always been an interesting dilemma between county and the private subdivisions that were created, and right-of-way issues. There was a question, this has come up a few times now. So can we apply for the federal funds coming down? You know, that's a good question. I did discuss this with Kānealiʻi-Kleinfelder, and I would be hopeful to get some federal funding, some state funding for this project. And also, I mean, for any other subdivision that wanted to improve their roads, I think there should be federal and county help. I have not been given a yes that we will receive funding, and so I can't say yes with authority. I can just say that I would hope that some of these dollars can come back to our county. You know, we are a small county in the state of Hawaii, so what that would mean, I don't know, but yeah, sorry, that's not a better answer for you. So you know, the question of the vote. So after the feasibility study, and again, it hasn't moved forward. So right now we're just waiting on information. Nothing has moved forward. I know that was a big question among everyone. You know, it's already been done. We're already moving forward on it. We're not. With the resolution postponed, the feasibility study has not begun. It will not begin until we pass the resolution. And again, I will not move forward on that resolution until I am certain that the numbers being presented are accurate, are fair, and don't put the Hawaiian Acres residents out of a home and out of their property. At that point, it doesn't make sense. So for fairness, and that's what I like about this improvement district process. For fairness, the study is brought up, and I'm just going to go through it again because I see some of the same questions, and I know some people tuned in a little bit late. For fairness, the feasibility study is step one. That's how we understand the cost. If you don't understand the cost, we don't know what it's going to cost as an assessment. When that study comes back with an understanding of the cost for each homeowner and the scope of the project, then there's another vote that ensues, and the people have a chance to voice their opinion there. There's a series of public notices that go out, and then there's a mailer that goes out to each resident. Each resident has the option to either say yes or say no. I find that very democratic. I find that very rule of the people oriented. You have a decision, you have a choice, and you get to participate. That's what I like about this. This is similar to voting. So if you like it, you say yes. If you don't like it, you say no. I guess furthermore, I know the community split on this. I do, I understand that. Some people want, some people don't. Some people feel strongly that public safety is an issue, others do not. And so given that, in order to have a good conversation, in order to have a process that's fair for everyone, that doesn't lead to a confrontation and more just an open discussion, this process really is that. And that's why I chose this, and that's why I presented it, because it provides you a voice. And if I can give you all a voice at the table, that's more so than a lot of other people have ever done. I'm not going to decide this for you. It wouldn't be proper for me to do that. I can provide the option. I'll provide the county support, but I'll always make sure you have a voice at the table. So the next question, Can you address the idea of how, if we become an improvement district, we may tap into federal funds that might be available to improve infrastructure in low-income areas? I touched on that a little bit, Shannon. I would be hopeful that that could happen if we can get federal funding, given our rural nature of every subdivision in Puna. That's basically almost the whole island of Hawaii. And two, you know, we're not notoriously the richest district. We all struggle. We all have 2 or 3 jobs, myself included. So I would hope for federal funding. I would hope that the state and the county could have some buy-in in this too. I mean, these subdivisions didn't just create themselves. They were created from large agricultural pieces of property into subdivisions that equals out now to an incredible amount of property taxes. And to be very clear, everyone in Hawaiian Acres pays their fair share of fuel tax and general excise tax. And if you think about your route to work every day, I want you to consider that your private roads are your own and are not maintained by the county. When you hit the state highway system, that's maintained through state dollars, which is your general excise taxes. And you may use some small connector routes and roads in Hilo, but for the most part, your route in and out of your home is a road that you're required to pay for and the state pays for. Yet every time you go to the pump to pay for your drive home, you are paying for fuel tax. That goes to fund our public works department, mass transit department, takes care of our highways, takes care of our roads. And that's important to remember when you think about what are you getting for your input into the public tax system. Okay, next question. One road and F road connected to Ainaloa and Highway 11. Can we get a cost assessment for these 2 roads? That may be possible if we move forward with this. What I did ask the director, Director Rodenhurst, was if we could get to a point where we could almost break this down as a per mile option, or to have a few different options. It's something that would take a little bit of collaboration between the community and to Public Works and us. But ultimately, I'd like to be able to break it down to a point where we could say, okay, well, just in general, it's a good estimate to use. It's going to be X amount per mile. So if we can look at, like one road and F road connected to Ainaloa and Highway 11, then we can look at what it would cost to build those out as part of this improvement district process. Or that's a major egress out of Hawaiian Acres, like Kulani is, then those should be county maintained, owned, and operated, because that's the role of the county. I don't want this improvement district to take on any roads that don't have a county purpose. And I wouldn't put that burden on you because you're already paying your taxes to take care of the rest of the roadways. So don't take on more than is in your subdivision that you want to improve in this process. Okay, I'm looking for other questions. Feel free to jump them in. If you're not getting an answer, retype them in. There's a lot of questions and a lot of people on tonight. What we got? Yeah, so there's a question about taxation. I'm reading it, sorry. So a big question is taxation without representation by the article or section that says county doesn't pay for private roads. We are paying county and state road tax fees. So I think this statute or whatever needs to be addressed with a class action suit of all private subdivisions of Puna to express the unfairness of the situation. I cannot say it, but in some ways I have to say there may be a point at which all the subdivisions in Puna could have a larger discussion. I think it's important to address paying taxes for roadways that you may not be getting. I think that's a very important point, and I think that's a very smart question. There's been a lot of questions about the survey, so I'm just going to sum it up again. As I said in the beginning, I discussed with Haka and earlier today, just to get my numbers correct, there were 3,200 surveys sent out. Of the 3,200 surveys that were sent out, 714 were returned. And of those 714, 122 were negative to any form of improvement. And there is roughly 500 or 600 that were positive to a form of improvement. If more information is needed about that, I do urge you to contact the Hawaiian Acres Community Association. I really feel like they did a good job, and I think they tried their hardest. And I know that it's not easy to get that kind of a mailer out and done and labeled, having been through a couple campaigns now. So I appreciate their efforts, and again, the reason for that survey was just to understand, what does this look like for the community, and that was it. Just wanting to understand what we may or may not be looking at, and if people were, positive or negative to it. And from the results that we got, having, let's say 550 people positive to it, I felt that that was realistic then for us to consider the idea and put it before the county and the community. If you go back, I'm looking at one of the comments, how Hawaiian Acres was first speculative subdivision in 1958. How does the 1940s factor in? It doesn't. Facts count. And there was a lot of movement, and I thought the best way to sum it up would be from the 40s to the 70s, there was a huge number of subdivisions that were open and created. If you want to get very specific, most of them occurred between the 50s and the end of 1970. The code has that very clear articulation of any subdivision created before 1966, blah, 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 blah. That code really is and addresses all the subdivisions that were finalized and platted before 1966. And that's always been an interesting sticking point as far as what can be funded, what cannot be funded. Okay, so there's another question here. What can we do as far as going to the Supreme Court to allow us to at least charge mandatory road dues like all other subdivisions are currently allowed to do? We have been denied previously. Okay, I think everyone gets the gist of that question. For me, that is something that could be considered within the homeowners association, not homeowner association, within your community association. You have bylaws, you have HARC. Like I said in the beginning, you're a very unique subdivision in the way that you were created and in the way that your road dues are. It's just a very unique situation. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to give law advice. I would say, for those of you who are worried about that, I understand your concerns. Like we touched on the beginning, if all 4,000 parcels gave their $30 to the community association, you'd have $120,000, but you have 70 miles of roadway. Being that they're voluntary, I don't think you get your $120,000 a year. And if you wanted to press forward to get mandatory road dues, then you'd have some large discussions to have within your community. That is another way to do this. And I'm going to go right back to where I started with all this in 2019. This is an option that could work for the community. There's many other ways to do this. But my job, my responsibility as your councilman is to at least provide options to you so that we can make decisions that better our community. And again, You don't like it, you don't like it, say no. If you love it, say yes. If you want to call me and talk and chat, I'm open anytime. So like I said, we're back to the property assessment. Property assessment. We don't know what the property assessments are until we have a cost. Property assessment is the cost of the project. The county pulls a 20 to 25-year bond for the amount of the project. Once we know the cost, we have the time frame for the bond payback. Then an assessment is created and it comes back as a fee for the people. And I mean, that's really it. And I've been upfront from that from the beginning. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that this will get magically taken care of. It does come back as an assessment. It is going to be an increased cost. I think, you know, too, I discussed something with one of the residents on Friday morning. And we had a good conversation, a good back and forth. And ultimately, at the end, I said, look, if we did move forward with this, but we could get this down to something where it was less than $200 or $300 a year, which is what I see other communities paying for mandatory road dues, then would you be open to it? And the answer was yes. And I think there's kind of a break-even point where you feel like the cost is something that's doable for you and the project would greatly benefit you. You know, no more crazy bumpy rides on the way home. You call the police and they're there quicker. You have an ambulance ride in or out. It's less bumpy or, you know, horrible. And it provides a living experience that's a little bit better, but again, at a cost. So I think there's a break even for everybody on what that looks like. If it's, for some people, they may say, hey, $1,000 a year is doable. Other people, you know, $20 a year could be completely out of the picture. And I get that, totally understand that. So that's us, that's why we're here. Feasibility study, we understand the cost, then we understand the assessment, and then we vote again and we decide if we want to move forward or not. But if we don't do anything, if we maintain this holding cycle of it's going to cost us some crazy amount to say no, but we never actually understand what the real data is, we never understand the real number for what the project would be, the scope of the project and what it would get us, then we're just stuck in the same situation we've been since, I mean, since the 1960s. There's a question of people not being informed of this meeting. For any fears about that, I'm recording it. I'm going to put it back up online at the end. You can watch it again if you want. You can share it. I'll put it up on Facebook or YouTube. I don't know who does and doesn't have access, but I figured that was a good way to get it out to everyone. Given the discussion that was occurring, I wanted to make sure that we provided the facts and the data for everyone so that you can come to a decision on your own and not rely on information that could be wrong or you know, exaggerated. And given its accessibility online, everyone can take a look at it, watch it. And again, all my information is on there. If you want to contact me, contact me. If you have further questions, please. I'm always here and I'm always open. And again, we're not moving forward on this until I feel that everyone is okay with what's going on and we understand what the costs are. So that's it. Another question, wondering if a good starting place would be to revisit the options for the improvement proposal. Perhaps the community could have more input onto which roads they wanted to improve and what method or improvement, paving, gravel, asphalt, etc., would be good. That's a great idea. I mean, we had the initial options go out. And again, I took that option 2, which had the most votes. I think it was 40% of the votes. And I don't want to play this statistics game. There was, again, 3,200 mailers, 715 came back, 285 positive for option 2, period. I won't play the statistics, you know, 50% said yes, no. So given that, if we want to take a look at, sorry, what was the question again? Yeah, if you want to take a look at changing the roads or developing a new strategy, I'm open to that. The director I discussed it with, sorry, the previous administrative director that I discussed with previously today said we should come forward with a few different options, so we can get a grasp on what the community wants and understand the cost. You know, if there's a solution that's more cost accessible to everyone, that does the same, that provides as much of a benefit to everybody, then I think people would be for that. I would be for that. It would make sense to me. Again, cost for everybody versus benefit. And that's what I've been weighing from the beginning on this. And I will continue to make sure that it's not going to cost anyone out of their homes just so we can have nice roads. It's got to be a good balance for everybody. Yeah, some people have said the project scope is way too big. You know, could we, or if the project were narrowed to Road 1 and possibly F and 8, it could be doable, but the current options are all too large. In some ways, yes, I would agree. In other ways, I'd like to see the costs for what it would be. Again, I did some breakdowns on the math. If we did $200 a year, no, it's $250 a year as an assessment, that equals out to about a $30 million project. And a $30 million project, if a $30 million project was doable over 25 years and it equaled out to $250 a year for everyone as an assessment, you know, that's just a quick breakdown, quick numbers, don't quote me on that. Just if that was something that was an option and it got all the paved roads that are lettered and Road 1, I mean, it would make life very nice for a lot of people. And I think it's an option. If the community doesn't want that, that's fine. Then we redo and we sit down and we really hash out the details on what that improvement district looks like to everybody. If you see just Road 1, then that's an option. If you want to see just a series of grids, maybe it's every other lettered road. I would caution though, if we get too caught up in we're gonna take 16 years to figure out what roads are gonna be the project, we'll be back in this holding cycle. And for as much as I want to make sure we listen to everybody, I also want to make sure that for those who want this, that we have a kind of a movement in a direction, whatever that may be. There's some discussion of flooding. Flooding, I'm just going to keep that as a separate issue. The roads need to be built and engineered to handle drainage. Flooding, I've seen from Aloha Estates all the way down through Hawaiian Acres, through Kulani, down to Orchid Land, and not too many years ago, it actually crossed Highway 130. I think flooding, flooding has to be addressed at a very high level. I have discussed with Kānealiʻi-Kleinfelder, I've discussed with my state reps, I have discussed it with our county folks. I have reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers to do a LiDAR study. Flooding has to be addressed in a way that we don't just have one community funnel the water into the next community down the mountain. At that point, it actually does more damage than good. What is going to be needed, if anyone wants to reference this, there's a Mountain View Ultimate Drainage Project that was done in 1976. And that project really outlined flooding issues. At the time, there wasn't enough people to make it worth a while. There was like 400 residents in Mountain View. This was again 1976. But they did lay out the issues, the flood prone areas, and what that would have to look like to take care of the issue but not affect everyone down the mountain. It's going to be something similar like we saw in Waiakea, but we need to be able to move the water down from, I would say, Aloha Estates, because that's where I see a lot of the water coming from, through the Hawaiian Acres community or around the community and down the mountain towards the highway without doing damage along the way. So while an improvement district and the roads would have to incorporate what we know about flooding in the area and what roads get a lot of water inundation, the overall idea of a drainage improvement project needs to happen at a federal level, because that's a way bigger project than we're talking about right now. Looking for other questions, sorry. You know, it's a good question. Now, how will we get 4,000 lot owners involved in the process? It's a good question. I mean, I saw a lot of mailers in the trash through my campaigns. I've seen a lot of mails thrown away. I did have some polls ready. If anyone wants to be polled today, we can just do a quick poll and see how everyone's feeling. You want to run the poll? Should I run the poll? I'm just gonna pop up some polls now while we're talking. And just go ahead if you can. Just click on the options, and we'll put up the results. Again, there's only 51 people on right now. It's always interesting to see how things go. But I think everyone getting involved is just a matter of making sure that we're all communicating and connected. Like we see a lot these days, it's if you don't agree with somebody, you want to have an argument and a fight about it. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be an open discussion where we agree or disagree, and ultimately that just helps us understand each other and what we want to do going forward. So the first poll is up. If you wanna join, you can. Again, I'm not going to use these to further any motives. It's just for everyone to get a feel for who's on tonight and how they feel about it. That's a good question sorry, I cannot say names. If this project passes, what if someone wants to opt out because of not being financially able to pay the tax? Will the county provide some assistance? You know, I don't have a good answer for that. As far as I know right now, when you create the district, the improvement district, everyone in the district has some form of an assessment that just pays for the bond. That makes it fair across the board for everyone who's involved. So with that said, I don't know what kind of county assistance there would be for someone wanting to opt out, or assistance at all. I mean, I'd like to think that there would be, but I don't have a good answer for you. I will put that down on my list of questions to be answered at a better time. So for another good question, you know, I'm not willing to pay for the feasibility study. I want to know what steps I need to take to stop the feasibility study from happening. Very fair question. So the feasibility study, we'll quickly back to where we started, may or may not be reimbursed to the county through the assessments for the project district. I say that it's important because the word shall is not in that sentence. You can end the poll and start the next one. That's important because if it's not a shall, it doesn't say that you will be. And then share the results. That you will be charged for the feasibility study. If you don't want the feasibility study for the project district, then I would urge you to please come to the next council meeting, not the next meeting, I'm sorry. The council meeting, if this item is brought back once we've received more data, and I want you to voice your opinion there, and I want you to say no, and I want you to tell us why, and I want to understand why. And that does a lot. That goes to show how many people out there want and how many people don't want. If this is something you want, I want you to be open about that. Don't feel like you have to argue with me. Don't feel like it's going to be an argument. I just need to know where everybody stands so I can understand what we want to do going forward. Okay, I'm going through everybody. So you can see from the results that we just had, you had 27 yeses and 7 no's. You know, we'll leave the other ones out of the 51 people present. That's about 20 people who didn't share. So That's just from the people online right now. During our council resolution hearing, I think I had about 12 supportive testimonies and about 2 negative testimonies. So the numbers seem consistent. We're gonna go ahead and do a different poll now for the project scope, just to understand if people feel that lettered roads and road 1 is a good option. I'm seeing some back and forth in the chat room, and I want everyone to know again, the resolution that was brought forward to begin the study was postponed. That means that it's on hold. The reason it's on hold, because that study shows us whether or not the cost is accessible for people, or whether it is or is not. That's important because that cost at the end ultimately gets transmitted back to the community, and it's good for us to know whether you do it or not. But we can't make a good decision unless we have a number. That's kind of where we get stuck. There's another question on there. Is there a possibility that the county could require us to improve the roads due to slow response for emergency services? No. As far as I know now, we cannot require you to improve roads for emergency services. Okay, so I'm looking at more of a statement. I see the director is on, and I appreciate his time tonight. Thank you for being on here. Happy Mother's Day to your family, sir. Yes, I would like to have a scope meeting with you. I had a discussion with one of our previous administrators, and it was a good discussion. I'd like to discuss some of the things that were brought up during the meeting this morning, and see what we can do to really come back with a strong estimate for the community so that they can understand whether this is an option that's something that can be done. And mahalo for that offer, and I will take you up on that. Thank you. Okay. Looking over the question, sorry. Again, I mean, if it comes back as being expensive, then the option is going to be to say no, scrap the project and be done, or possibly adjust the project to be something more affordable. Again, it's community driven. It's up to you guys. I'm not here to dictate to you what's going to happen. I'm just here to provide an option, explain the differences and how it works. Right now, there's no set date for the meeting for finance. I am holding back until I have real data from Public Works and from finance. I want to make sure that those numbers are solid before we come back. I don't want any more misinformation from the newspaper or bad estimates to go out. I want to make sure that the community fully understands what we're looking at. And I'm going to stick to that. I'm not going to stray from that. It has to be something that's affordable and accessible to everyone. Public safety is a huge issue. And again, whether public safety is or isn't an issue for you, it's completely up to you. But what I have heard from many people is they just are having a hard time making that drive every day. And they're worried about their partner. I've had stories of people having a heart attack and having to drive to the front of the subdivision to meet the ambulance because they know it's the difference between life or death. And when I hear stories like that, I cannot not act. I have to do something. I will not stand by and put you in harm's way. Crystal, while you're in the chat, wondering where we can access or direct others who are unable to attend to the recording of the meeting. I'm going to put this meeting up, and put it on Facebook so people can go back through it. This is meant to be a public discussion, and I want to further that discussion. And I want people's input. Again, it's the same thing I've said from the beginning. I'm going to provide the option. I'll make it very public. I'm not going to hide anything. All of this is laid out in Chapter 12 in our Hawaiʻi County Code for improvement districts. If you're going to look at another section of the code, it'd be Chapter 23. All of those can be found on the county website. Please do your research, look into it. If you find something that doesn't work or really highlights this is a good thing, then feel free, share with me. I want to know. It'll just be put back up for everyone so they can watch it and understand the issue. Given the discussion over the last couple of days stemming from the Tribune Herald article, I think it's important for everyone to have the information, get it directly from myself. And going forward, if you have a question about what's going on, I want you to feel comfortable to reach out to me. If you have a question, if you have a concern, I mean, like I said at the beginning, if you hate it, tell me. If you love it, tell me. I'm open. I'm open ears. But I'm looking for any questions that I haven't answered yet. No, it's a good question. Change, it's not a question, it's more of a statement, but change the bylaws. Let us do what we want to do. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't get a huge amount of people asking me to help with roads. And again, this is an option. It's an option for you. If you look at this from a different point of view, if you do a project improvement district and the fees are what you would pay for with a mandatory road due, then you're looking at a very similar cost. The difference being, in a lot of the communities that I interact with, there's always a question of who's spending the funding, where the money's being spent, who's doing what with the money. I mean, it comes up a lot. And so with this one, a lot of those variables are taken out. You decide on the project as a community, you move forward full and well knowing what the costs are. When the project's done, you knew exactly what you were going to get. And furthermore, if you go one step further, the roads can become county roads and they no longer fall to you to maintain. There's a huge difference between that and trying to put together funding to take care of your own roads. Is it the end all solution? No, it's not. I said that from the beginning. If you want to take this on yourselves, then we vote this down, we put it away, and I let everyone go back to doing the voluntary road dues, and I leave it at that. And I'm completely open to that result. If that's the result of this, okay. There's always going to be a split in difference in what we all feel. Some people are for, some people are against. This is just another option. There's a question, should people who don't live here get a chance to vote? Yeah, they should get a chance to vote. And ultimately, if it's a lot owned by people from out of state, out of country, and they're helping to pay for an improvement district, I feel that they should. If they don't live here, then I mean, everyone should have to pay their fair share, given that the county has written off the private subdivisions, they will not participate in maintenance, and have left the financial burden on the community. So there's a question about the voting process and why a no vote is considered a yes vote, or not, sorry, I didn't say that right. Why a non-response is considered a yes vote. It's laid out in the code. I don't know who wrote it. I know that it comes down from the HRS or the Hawaii Revised Statutes. It's their state law. It came from there, came into our county code, is laid out in this form. And it's what That's all I go by is what's on paper. Why it's like that, I don't know. I don't know who wrote it. My guess would be it really does push everyone to be a voice instead of saying, well, I'm not going to vote. If you know your non-vote or your non-participation equals a yes, it does incline people to make sure they show up and vote. On the back end, if you have non-active members who are out of state, out of country, who don't respond to a letter and to public notices, then it makes sure that they're participating in the community in a way. So that's just my opinions on the matter. Again, I don't know why it was designed that way. And I'm getting the same request a lot of that. How do we stop this project? You stop it by showing up. I have a good friend that always tells me, the world is run by those who show up. If you don't like it, make that known. I want you to vote no. And I'm not here to convince you to say yes. I want you to vote no if you don't like it. That's how you make it stop. If you don't like it, you don't want to see new roads or you don't want to see road improvements, you vote no as it comes up to council. You vote no when you get the mailer. You just vote no at all the different steps. That's what I've always appreciated about this style of project, is that you have a say all the way along the way. But at no point does anyone get to accost somebody or have an argument or a physical altercation or fight about it. You can discuss it. We can be adults and we can make a decision through the same process that we use to vote for a president or anybody else. And I really do like that about this. This is a good question. I like this one because I feel strongly about this. Why wouldn't the county at least pave a couple feeder roads for each private subdivision, since they allowed telecom phone lines in all those places? Telecom separate from county. Helco is separate from county. And we'll start with that. Should the county pay for feeder roads in and out? Right now they do. Kulani, that's a good example of a county road feeding into two separate communities, both Fern Acres and Hawaiian Acres. Do I feel like the county should take on a bigger chunk of those private roads? You bet I do. I feel that your taxes pay for it, and I'd like to see you getting a piece of that. I think that's about all I need to say. I'm gonna do one more poll for everybody. I'll take a few more questions, and then I'm gonna jump off for the evening. This is your next question popping up now. For anyone who had a question about not getting a survey and getting a survey, I would say please check in with your community association. Make sure your address is up to date on your file. I don't know. I did not do the mailer. I would say just follow up, do your due diligence, and make sure you're on record and everything else. I'm sorry, that's about the best I can do. I don't govern the community associations. My role is the county. Great question. Is paving the only option for an improvement district? From what I know, the improvement district has to be done to a dedicable standard, or you're not eligible for improvement district funding, or basically the bond from the county. Improved gravel roads, although we initially discussed that, I don't feel that's an option at this point. If the improvement district was to be pushed aside and we said no, can the community itself take on doing improved gravel roads? Yes. Yes, you can. Again, everyone, I'm watching the chat. I just want to make sure everyone is being respectful to one another. Again, we're all adults. We have a conversation. We discuss. We have our own points of view. It's fine to have a differing point of view, but there's no need for us to go any further than to accept that each of us may have a different point of view, and we can leave it there. I just want to make sure that I answer questions that were on everyone's mind tonight and take care of any, just want to help quell the fear that was in the community. And for any part I played in that, I do apologize. It wasn't the intention. Again, just trying to bring options to my community from the beginning. Roads and public safety are my priorities. We have worked to increase our police officer presence in PUNA, and I've been trying to address roads in our area for a long time, and not just Hawaiian Acres, but everywhere. And it really is a struggle. I'm going to say that because of the way the subdivisions were created and them being private, it's been a constant battle to figure out how to help when help is wanted. Yeah, I mean, Geneva does a wonderful job for what she has, and same with everyone on the Roads Corporation. If people want to, I'm sure she could use volunteers, and for those volunteer road dues that may be needed for the community to move forward on just addressing some of the basic road issues. It's a great time to get involved. If you need help shoveling gravel, I'll be there. I have a truck I can carry, I can trailer, I can do anything that's needed to help. That's the other half of who I am. I'm not just a face on your screen and at meetings. If you guys need help, let me know. Today, the Boy Scouts were out in the community, and they're putting up bus stops on some of the roads for our kids. It's something that we did through our office. Again, I'm here. It's my responsibility to take care of everybody in my district, and I'll always do that. And I'll always make decisions that are based on what's good for everybody. And I just want everyone to know that. There's a question for the date and the time of the meeting. Right now, there isn't one. Like I said, I'm waiting for precise data, and I need to create a very tight scope of the project. If it would be beneficial for everyone, I think we should have another community meeting and really break down what roads are wanted to build out. I like, just from my point of view, I like what option 2 gives to the community. I would like to discuss more with Director Rodenhurst from Public Works on what options we have as far as presenting different options and getting different cost estimates, how that looks for him, and really take a look at what we can offer to the community when we come back to council. And so, and I will put back out there for everyone to, when that council meeting is going to occur, we will put that out so everyone can participate and make sure that no one feels left out. But until I have a chance to sit down with Director Rodenhurst and Deanna Sacco from Finance and really nail down some hard figures for everyone, so we understand the costs that could be involved, then I just want to wait till I get those numbers, and then we can come back together again and do this again. Okay, I'm gonna take 1 or 2 more questions. Does anyone feel like there's a question that has not been answered tonight that is real pertinent to, again, just beginning to look at a study? That's why we're here. I just want to understand what we're looking at as far as a study. The polls that are popping up is just a way for us to share information with each other. Again, I'm not using these in any way. Just good to get a feel for how we all feel without having to feel like we're going head to head. Okay, I'm looking through the messages. I'll give you about 5 more minutes. If you have a real burning question that you feel hasn't been answered, then please put it into the chat so I can address. I'm here to answer questions. You have my full attention. So there's a question about eminent domain. I don't see that as a necessary step. It's something that is done and when there really is no other option. I would be hesitant to enforce that upon Hawaiian Acres at all. fact, I don't remember seeing an eminent domain usage in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been in office. That's a good question. So will the study just look at the overall cost of each option, or will it be such that the cost of sections of the options will be able to be easily looked at? That is something I need to sit down with Director Rodners to discuss. I wanted to see what we could do, even if it's to get an idea of the cost and then be able to break it into a per mile, because then you can take, you know, the roadways and really play with it. And I like that. It's like it'd be like putting a puzzle together. Okay, well, this is our total that we can afford. We can't go past that. So that's our X amount of miles of roadway. So can we look at, you know, road 1 and, you know, B, D, and E, and G, you know, what would that look like? Just so we can have the discussion, you know. That's really what it comes down to. We can't discuss anything without good data. If we don't have a number, you know, where do we go? And I think that's where we've been stuck for years, is we have no amount of money. We don't know how much things cost. Some people want improvements, some people don't. So let's just leave it alone. It's like, well, maybe we should have the discussion, see what it costs, and then from there we can make a good informed decision on what we want to do. Okay, I'm not seeing more questions. There's a lot of discussion today. I do appreciate it. And really, I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Again, it was never the intention to scare anyone, to step back a little bit. That resolution that came forward does not set anything in motion. We are waiting right now for more information from Public Works before we can even bring numbers back to the council to have that discussion. Until then, I want you to know that we're kind of in a holding pattern. Again, I appreciate everyone being here tonight. There will be more to come as we move through and get more information and it comes forward. Director Rodenhurst has been very helpful in this process, and I appreciate his time tonight too. He's on watching. I recognize a lot of these names from the community. Tomorrow is Mother's Day. I'm seeing that from one of the participants. I just want to happy Mother's Day to everyone. I'm glad that we could get this done, so tomorrow we can enjoy the day and at least enjoy our Sunday before we get back to our work week on Monday. And again, my door is open. I want to pop back up. I'm going to pop back to my screen. Let me see, I get back out of here. I'm just going to put up my my email address and my phone number right there. Please write them down. If I'm not in my office, you can leave a voicemail and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. My email is accessible all the time. Yep. And then just again, you know, happy Mother's Day to everybody. I see some very familiar names. Happy Mother's Day, March. Just good to see so many familiar faces. Oh, and special shout out to our neighborhood watch representatives on here as well. Happy Mother's Day to some of the neighborhood watch folks. Appreciate what you guys do for protecting our community. And I think I'll leave it at that. Mahalo for everyone's time. Have a good evening. And again, reach out to me if you have any further questions. Always open for the chat. Okay. Aloha, everyone.